Igniting, inspiring, and evoking the fire within.
How do you get your body to do what it does when everything in your body is screaming at you to stop? And I think we can really relate that back to everything in life. When your mind is telling you to stop, when your mind is telling you to give up on something, how do you overcome that with your will and show those guts to push on and to get further past it?
You're listening to the What's Your Inspiration podcast with Beyer.
Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the What's Your Inspiration podcast. Today, a good friend on for the last 3 or 4 years. He's a hockey nut. He's a marathon enthusiast. He's a proud Canadian and a father, an athletic trainer, but not necessarily in that order. He is Phil Ice Lee. Phil, how are you this evening?
I'm great, Box. I'm glad to be here with you, buddy.
And if I say I was glad to be here, that would be the ultimate understatement. Phil, the grind. And I've known you for the last 3 or 4 years since 16, and you've run marathons and spent entire seasons in the NHL, the MLB, and now in the prestigious Atlantic League of Professional Baseball. Tell me this. How are the grinds of a hockey season, an NHL season, and the baseball season different?
It's an interesting grind. With the hockey season, you spend a lot of time every day with the boys. You spend a lot of time at practice, but it's practice, and then you go home at night, and then there's baseball. And when you get to baseball, you play games every single night. So the grind is different. You got a lot more ups with the whole baseball mentality. A lot of ups and downs with going out there every single night and grinding it out, playing it out every single night, game every night. You don't have that with hockey. Hockey's going to give you those practice days, those off days. In the athletic training world, it's great because you have off days for guys to get healthy. In the baseball season, everyone's just grinding it out and doing their thing.
So competitively, it's not as intense, but for you, it's as intense because you're trying to get guys back.
Correct.
But in a competitive sense, it's not.
Correct. With baseball, I don't have those days to get the guys back like I would with hockey. I don't have those practice days, those days off. Baseball, as I said, you're playing every night. You show up, you go to a place for 3-4 days at a time, and you play a game every night. And hockey, you play a game, you go home, and you're right back at it again a couple days later.
It's got to be tough because knowing you, in your heart of hearts, you are a hockey fan, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
I would say that I grew up a much bigger hockey fan than I ever did a baseball fan. Mm-hmm. But there's something about the game of baseball that I've fallen in love with the whole atmosphere of playing every night, dealing with the grind, and just the intricacies of the game, the strategy that you see every single night in a game.
Right.
And it makes you just fall in love with the game itself.
Yeah, it's that downtime you have when things could turn at any moment. You could have an injury at any moment, but in those in-betweens when there's nothing happening, but there is when you're able to watch the game.
I sit there with our coaching staff, and I feel like the more I watch the game with them and really learn the ins and outs of the game, it brings a whole different side of the game that I never understood before.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're a cultured guy. You grew up in the country of Canada. You go off to Alaska for college, and then since then, as I've known you, you've spent a lot of time since age 18 in the lower 48. But there's so much more to you. Tell me about, in all of your walks of life, your most gratifying moment as a hockey player, a marathoner, or a trainer. What's in any of those three realms, hockey, baseball, running, what has been, to this point, your most gratifying moment, you would think?
it's kind of weird when I really think about it. I would honestly say my most gratifying moment in all of that was actually when I finally graduated college. Working in hockey, I didn't have my college degree yet. I was doing equipment side of things, and when that didn't pan out, I spent 6 years busting my butt trying to work full-time and go to school full-time and get my degree and finally finish up. And the most gratifying moment is probably that moment of graduating college and then having that first job in baseball and realizing that, you know what, I'm getting back to what I love. I'm getting back to that whole pro sports side of things where I know what I wanted, and I know that I finally worked my butt off to get there, and I got it. I got it back.
So getting to where you are currently are now, serving people, servant leadership, as you
absolutely.
say.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, the Atlantic League's not where my end goal is. It's not my end game, but it's a great spot, and I love the people I'm working with. I love the environment I'm working in, and it truly is a gratifying, rewarding moment.
Running with that, what has been your most rewarding moment in your current post? So your current post is you're the athletic trainer and traveling secretary for us, the Somerset Patriots. What has been, you can name a couple, your most gratifying moment here in Somerset?
There's been a handful of them. I mean, there's been those nights where you basically, doesn't seem like you've done a lot, but you've made such an impact on a player's career, a player's life by changing the smallest little thing in his mobility or the way he moves, to a night where you are popping an umpire's trachea back in, and he comes up to you the next day and gives you a huge hug and says, "Thank you for saving my life."
That's as human can be, and we'll go back to it. This is last year.
Last year. Umpire sitting behind the plate, pitcher's on board, throws a fastball, batter just gets a small, tiny little piece of it, foul tips it right back, catcher misses it, hits an umpire directly in the trachea, and that trachea is dislodged, and he's sitting on the field gasping for breath, and he's basically, he can't breathe, he can't do anything. And just instinct kicks in, and all of a sudden you move that trachea and you pop it back into place, and he gets that big gasp of air, and all of a sudden you go, okay, he can breathe, and it's that moment that you go, wow, that was cool. It scared the hell out of me, but that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're speaking to courage. Courage is being afraid, being scared, but having the skills to overcome and winning anyway. Winning anyway.
And it's that moment where you're just reacting. I mean, obviously, you don't expect that. You're never trained how to do that. But you just know what to do based on everything else. And you just do it and pray it works.
Yeah, and I think you're selling yourself short. I think you're responding in those situations. I think you responded based on the training and experience you had, and you saved a man's life is what you did. You did. It could have been anywhere, but you did it. You did it in front of 5,000 people on a night during a game. So we are saving lives with Phil Ice Lee here on episode 46 of the podcast. So speaking of that, I call you Phil Ice Lee. Could you share with our listeners the Ice story, Phil Ice story?
It's kind of funny. It came back when I was running in high school, and we had those big meets where it was, you had to get things done, and people used to just say you got ice running through the veins, because you knew when you were called upon, you were going to get that job done. And it was actually really funny. It was one of those meets where you had to get things done. And my last name is actually Lee. And for some reason, they must have done a really piss poor job writing my name on the results sheet that night, because the next day in the paper, it's showing the results of the race, and It's Phil Ice.
Phil Ice.
Phil Ice wins it.
So this is a marathon or what?
This is an 800-meter race.
800-meter race, and you were Phil Ice, but it's kind of funny because ice kind of fits you because you have to be ice in the situations, and within your job you have to react kind of cold-blooded to these potentially fire situations that, like we explained before. So
absolutely,
kudos to you for what you do, and you've done it not just in that situation, moving the umpire's trachea, but I can tell you in other situations that you haven't mentioned,
sure,
you save people. So kudos to you. We're gonna move on to a segment called What, Which, and Where. And if you listen to the podcast, I know you. I'm going to mention a phrase, a line from a movie that might be within your scope of experience, and you're going to tell us where it came from. So, question, Phil, are you ready?
Oh, let's do it, Fox.
Okay, so here we go. Here's the quote. It goes like this. Quote, this movie was shot in 3B, 3 beers. Looks good, eh? Where's that from?
I'm going to have to go with Strange Brew.
You are absolutely correct, Phil. 1 for 1. That is
go.
Rick Moranis in the movie Strange Brew.
Yeah.
Strange Brew for the hockey nut. Favorite scene from that movie?
Oh, God. I mean, there's so many of them. I really can't even give you one. That whole movie's hilarious.
It might be actually that one.
It might be.
The movie was shot in 3B, standing for 3 beers. Thank you, Rick Moranis. Okay, next one.
All right, let's do it.
On your experience. This is baseball. The best way to catch a knuckleball is to let the ball stop rolling and pick it up. Who said that?
God, I wish I knew. I truly don't know that one.
It's somebody you may or may have not met in your travels.
Huh.
Again, the best way to catch a knuckleball is let it stop rolling and pick it up.
God, I can't think. What's that guy's name? It's the broadcaster for the Brewers. I know that.
It is.
Just trying to think of what his name is at the moment. Kind of blanking on him.
3, 2, 1. Bob Uecker.
It's got to be Bob Uecker. Yeah.
You ever meet him?
I did. He's a funny guy, believe it or not.
I believe it. We believe it. Can you share
don't.
anything about when you met him?
He used to come down to the visiting clubhouse quite frequently when I was with the Brewers, and I was a visiting clubby in the Brewers clubhouse, and he'd come down, and even just after a game, he would just be shooting it with some of the managing staff, and he was a funny guy. Just he would sit there and tell stories, and they'd all tell stories, and you just want to just sit back and laugh because it's going to be a funny night when that happens.
Not many can say they met Bob Uecker, but you have in your travels.
I have.
You have.
Probably one of my favorite nights with Bob and Tony La Russa, and sitting there listening to them talk baseball, and it was a funny night.
That had to be absolutely amazing.
There's a lot of beers going down that night, let me tell you.
I don't doubt it. So we'll give you 1.5 out of 2.
All right, I'll take it.
1.5 out of 2. All right. So moving on to quote number 3 in What, Which, and Where, reflecting on your time as a fitness guy, a marathoner, a bicyclist or runner. This goes back to episode 10 or around there. Billy Crum. I use this quote as well. To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift.
That would be a Steve Prefontaine quote right there.
No question. Reflect on the impact that Mr. Steve Prefontaine has had on you from afar.
I mean, growing up, it was like being an 800-mile runner. You always looked at Prefontaine, and it was pretty cool. All your boys and everyone was always talking about Pre and the movies coming out that you watch with Without Limits and Pre itself, reading all the books, and just he was an incredible athlete, and it would have been amazing to see what he could have done in Montreal, given the opportunity. But to me, it was the way he raced. It was the guts that he showed. Much like myself, he was never the biggest, never the strongest, but he just ran with guts. And to me, that just went everywhere.
Running with guts and saving lives here on episode 46 of the What's Your Inspiration podcast with Phil Ice Lee. Phil, in the bottom half of the podcast, kind of wrapping up here, life has taken you places, Canada, Alaska, many spots in the lower 48, and you've experienced highs and lows in your journey.
Sure.
My question to you and advice for our listeners, what advice do you have for people who have felt like they have hit rock bottom?
That's a tough spot. That one hits close to home because you never know when the bottom is going to be, where the bottom is, and sometimes when you think you're at the bottom, unfortunately you go a little deeper. But it's got to be that grind every day, and to find that one piece of inspiration, or that one person that says, you know what, fuck this all. I'm gonna come above this, and I'm gonna be better than all this. And sometimes you need those friends to lean on as well, and those good people in your life that you can just vent to for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and you finish up and they pick you up and help you move back on.
Who have been those people for you? Who have been those backbones?
Quite honestly, you're one of them, Fox. Our coaching staff here in Somerset has been fantastic. I have a few friends around the league, different trainers that it doesn't matter what time of day it is, you can pick up the phone and they get where you're at. They understand it. And then, of course, my parents, they're fantastic. They're the best people I could ever ask for. It doesn't matter if it's 3, 4, 5 in the morning. I could pick up the phone and say, hey, Mom, I'm having a bad day, or hey, Dad, it's what's going on, and they'll pick you up and help you through these harder times. And I think it's keeping those people that truly care about you, keeping the inspiration in your life. I know I have my little man, my son, and he keeps me going every day. Whether it be while we're on the road and just hearing him say, hi, Daddy, how was your day? And you ask him how his day is, and he just tells you it's great. And he doesn't have a care in the world. And knowing that he misses you, and knowing that you're going to get home to him soon, and it just makes all the difference in the world to keep you going every day. Helps with the grind. Helps with picking you up when, as you said, you feel like you're hitting that bottom of the rock. You're at the bottom, and as I said, sometimes you feel like you're at the bottom, and the next day it gets even deeper.
It's even deeper. But you've got an authentic source. Your 4, almost 5-year-old son.
Yeah.
It's, I am not a father, but I'm, in a small sense, I am a reader, and there's a book out there, The Power of Positive Thinking, Dr. Peel, and what he writes in that book. One of the things I wrote down when I first read it in 2008, look at life from the point of view of a child. Nothing is too good to be true, and you have that source every single day.
Absolutely,
with your son. So,
and it's fantastic, and he's my world. And I can't imagine life without him.
And hopefully you'll have a good many years with him, Phil.
Absolutely.
Good many years. Okay. Wrapping up. Okay. We know all heroes don't wear a cape. But if you had a chance to take a 1-hour car ride with one of the following 3 people, who would it be and why? Would it be Bob Uecker, the cast of Strange Brew, or Steve Prefontaine?
As much as it would scare me to get behind the wheel with him, I think I got to go with Steve Prefontaine. The way that guy shows his guts. I don't know if a lot of your listeners know, but he does die pretty tragically in a car accident.
Did die, yeah.
Did die pretty tragically in a car accident, and might be scary to get behind the wheel with him, but you got to admire someone that.
What would be the first question you would ask him on that ride?
That's a really good question. I think first thing I would probably ask him is, how do you get your body to do what it does when everything in your body is screaming at you to stop? And I think we can really relate that back to everything in life. When your mind is telling you to stop, when your mind is telling you to give up on something, how do you overcome that with your will and show those guts to push on and to get further past it?
Mm-hmm. The overarching question, how do you give more when you think you have nothing left?
Exactly.
Boy, God rest his soul. Phil, last question here. How can people get in touch with you? Who would you like to hear on an upcoming podcast? And any other advice? Empty your pockets, not literally but figuratively. Any other advice you would have for our listeners?
Best way to get in touch with me is always email. It's Phil_Lee@SomersetPatriots.com. Happy to hear and answer any questions from anyone at any time.
Okay. An upcoming podcast?
Upcoming podcast, jeez.
Who would you like to hear?
Fox, you come up with some of the best people I know. You're an amazing, incredible person, and I'm sure you're going to have some people with some great stories coming up.
Let's try and get Yuka on here, huh?
Oh, that'd be great. I think you'd probably need about a 2-hour podcast that day, let me tell you.
We'd do it. We'd extend the time. Any other advice you'd have for our listeners?
When you think you can't do something, just stay positive, because you can do a lot more than you think your body's capable of doing.
When you think you can. Phil, this has been spectacular. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Fox. Glad to be here with you.
That will wrap up episode 46 of the What's Your Inspiration podcast. Phil and I will talk with you all later. Take good care.
You have been listening to the What's Your Inspiration podcast with Fox Beyer. Because impact on each other is the greatest currency you could ever have.